Okay, hello and welcome everybody to the Mizoram Roundtable. This is brought to you by boomlive, that is boomlive.in. We are fact checkers and we counter disinformation. We're based in Mumbai and Delhi, and we work out of India, Bangladesh, and Myanmar. And if you think about India, Bangladesh, and Myanmar, and you think of the map, we realized some time ago that we don't really know one region very well as mainland Indians, which is and region very much a part of India, that is our northeastern states. And from that insight, we decided that we should do something to correct it. In December last year, we launched the Northeast Facts Network. And as part of that, we're doing this Mizoram Roundtable. My name is HR Venkatesh, and I'm the Director of Training and Research here at Boom Live. I'm joined by the person who leads the Northeast Facts Network, Dr. Sabina Yasmin Rahman. You've all been speaking with her. We also have our fact checker, who's a fact checker as well as a trainer, Divya Chandra, and our producer, Titha Ghosh, and our research assistant, Shulu Dev. So here's how the next 1.5 hours is going to unfold. Each speaker will speak for about 3 to 4 minutes in the beginning. In the first round, a little bit about their work in themselves, how that intersects with Mizoram's issues. And in the second round, each speaker, we will invite them to talk about what we as mainland Indians, or maybe from outside the Northeast, from outside the world, what we get wrong about Mizoram. We have a fantastic panel. What you saw up on the screen is no longer accurate. We've had a few changes. I'm going to mention who's all going to be speaking here. We have Joseph K. Lalfaghzwala, who's the Assistant Professor, Department of Political Science, Government T. Romana College. We have Bazik Thana, who's a visual artist and PhD candidate, School of Arts and Aesthetics at Jawaharlal Nehru University. We have Saiding Pui Silo, currently pursuing a PhD as well in the Department of Sociology, Mizoram University. We have Samuel V.L. Tlanga, Associate Professor and Head of Department of History at the Government Aizawl West College. We have Zara Bawitlung, Assistant Professor, Sociology, Mizoram University. We have C. Lalmohan Sankimi, Associate Professor, Center for Media Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. And we have Mapuya Lalnamnun Puya, Director, Zonit TV Limited, and Editor and Publisher, Wanglaini Daily. We did invite two others. Samveli, Assistant Professor, Sociology and Social Anthropology at Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Guwahati. She was not able to make it. We also invited Ezrela Dalidia Fanai, a freelance journalist. She too was not able to make it. So here's how, as I said, we're going to start speaking now. And I invite you all to speak for 3 to 4 minutes about your work and maybe how that intersects with Mizoram. And I apologize for the noise that's coming in as well. I don't have any control over that, but let's bring in Joseph K. Lalfaghzwala. He's working, as I said, as an assistant professor at the Department of Political Science at the Government T. Romana College. His area of interest lies in many areas, of course, but autonomy and federal studies, Northeast political history, and borderland studies, among other things. Joseph, you have 3 to 4 minutes. I'm going to time everyone so that essentially we all get a chance to speak. So the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Venkatesh sir. So thank you for Boom team for making this even a reality. Let's see how we can get up regarding Mizoram. So as Venkatesh has stated, my name is Joseph and I think you can hear me, sir.
Yes, we can all hear you.
Yeah. Okay, yes. Regarding my area of studies, like Venkatesh has said about, I'm working on the political history of Northeast, then I'm narrowing it down to Mizoram. And now my recent work is on the border issues, interstate border and the international borders. But regarding the interstate borders, I'm used by the government. I should say that I'm right now working on the Kachar Assam borders, which is a little bit confidential, which I cannot talk about because it is the ongoing studies given by the government of Mizoram. But beyond that now, I'm also widen my area to the Myanmar and Bangladesh side, which I used to visit occasionally, and I have also done the case study in some villages. Now I'm working on these things regarding the border.
Was that my internet or was it his internet?
I think it's his internet. Somebody needs to, I'll tell him.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Joseph, I don't know if you can hear us, but we'll get back to you soon. Why don't we bring in our next speaker? Is that fine? I think I'll do that. Let's bring in Bazik. Bazik has some slides to show us. He's a multimedia art practitioner engaged in various art forms and has an interdisciplinary approach. He completed his BFA and MFA painting from the College of Art, New Delhi. His MPhil in visual studies from JNU, MRes in curatorial knowledge from Goldsmiths, University of London. He's a PhD candidate at JNU. He's participated and displayed his work in various exhibitions and projects in India and abroad. Bazik, it's over to you. And we're looking forward to what you have to share. It's the same deal. We have 3 to 4 minutes.
Okay. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lal Klanchua, also known as Bazik Klana. I like to describe myself as, I was just introduced, a multimedia art practitioner with an interdisciplinary approach, in the sense that my practice does not confine to one particular medium or style, or nor rely on established parameters and categories. So basically, I make art and have been practicing since 2010, roughly speaking. I have a variety of interests, which include identity politics, issues of representation, nationalist politics, sleep and affect, amongst others, using different mediums like painting, drawing, performance, text, etc. I see my role of an artist as an interlocutor that tries to bridge across disciplines. And I see myself as a catalyst that helps force new line of questioning and originating dialogue, and by no means an expert. For me, art is a way of conceiving new perspective and relational modes, different ways of looking and seeing, which is otherwise veiled by confines of strict disciplines. So I'll be sharing my screen as well. By way of an introduction, I will share some of my works and the thought processes that goes with it. And I will also try to bring in the topic that I have chosen for this session, which is echoes of silence, narrative otherwise. And the way I see it, silence is multifaceted, right? So one of the recent historical events that has had a lasting impact of considerable consequence is probably the bombing of Aizawl, or Mizoram, and 20 years of insurgency and counterinsurgency known as Ramboy that followed. Apart from many of the atrocities and human rights abuses that was carried out by the armed military forces, where our parents and grandparents were the first-hand victims, younger generation like myself were the victims of its trauma, right? And this led to the feeling of indifference in our relationship with the so-called mainland India. And I remember as a young kid how a mere sight of men in uniform would scare us, or a different facial feature would make us feel insecure. So the bombing of Aizawl in 1966 is a key moment in the history of the Republic of India, and the first and only instance where the government of India used air power against its own people. The event has been silenced but refused to be erased. As opposed to my own experience that I have said earlier, and the trauma, the newer generation or the younger generation seems to forget and do not know much about this. And there has been considerable silence, and only in recent years that we see, or we have seen, an emergence of novels, especially in English, that talk about this period. And this is where the multifaceted silence comes into play, where there is an imposed razor and silence from the government. Every year on the anniversary of the bombing, there is always a discussion around the complacency of Mizos in bringing the issue to light. And one of the works that I made in 2017, which is titled 1966, attempts to address this issue and show that silence is not tantamount, or silence is not necessarily the same as acceptance or compliance, and propose that it stems from dissenting voices historically silenced and pushed aside in the act of nation building. The act of painting and violently destroying it, this is my process of the work, and the process is as much as important as to the final outcome of the work, and attempt to whitewash and cover up the damages and inadvertently leaving scars and dents as a way of reenacting the chain of events is documented and projected onto the canvas. This layering also serves as a metaphor for the ways the rest of India views Mizoram and invites them to see beyond the outward layering and the whitewash cover, but really a step closer to discover the truth beneath, not only about the events of 1966, but that of the state itself, right? So I will also share another work, which this is called Silence and Indeterminacy is a Vicious Cycle, which address state repression, military presence, and AFSPA, the Armed Force Special Act in the Northeast, using an assemblage of soundscapes, archival materials, and artistic reenactments, right? So the work attempts to question the predominance of certain sensory experience over another, which in turn question accountability of certain narratives over another. And this is also what I meant when I said that I'm a multimedia artist. Although I'm trained as a visual artist, I start to question the predominance of visual culture. And one of the things that I have been mulling over is the fact that certain sensory experiences are predominant over others. So even in law, there's a saying that seeing is believing, or how eyewitness accounts is often held credible or accountable in legal procedures. But as much as our eyes can deceive, an absence of sight does not really dismiss anything. And this is just one more work. So this is on alternative photography technique called as entotype, made from natural pigments, right? So the usual approach is to create images using photosensitive paper and fixing the image. But instead, I didn't fix the image, so that with continuous exposure, the image starts to fade, right? So this is called the title, Do You Even Care?, which scrutinizes judicial system in the context of AFSPA, Act in the Northeast India. So the use of alternative photography is to recreate images and leaving the photosensitive pigment unfixed, which ultimately vitiate the lucidity of the image upon continuous exposure, and which also begets the question whether a prolonged injustice also led to a loss of public memory and in turn silence. I guess I can stop with that for the introduction. Maybe we can talk more about in the later session. Thank you.
Yes, please. Thank you so much, Bazik. You know, I see this as my first step towards making meaning through and learning about Mizoram and your art, you know, in multiple ways. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's bring in our next speaker, Saiding Pui Silo, who's a PhD research scholar at the Department of Sociology, Mizoram University. Her areas of interests are identity, culture, food, and culinary studies. It's over to you, Saiding Pui.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Firstly, my name is Saiding Pui, and currently I'm pursuing PhD in Department of Sociology in Mizoram University. And the topic of my thesis is cultural identity in food habits and culinary practices of Mizo society. So I mainly focus on this contemporary food ways of Mizo, such as the commonly consumed food items, the cooking styles, the dietary patterns, the food preservation techniques, and even the cultural norms and rituals regarding food consumption. And also, I looked at this domestic division of labor and gender roles within the household structures in relation to food preparation, food choice, and even food habits through their everyday eating practices. And also, I study about this urban and rural differentiation in relation to food culture in Mizoram, and also the influence of foreign waves in Mizo food culture, or we can call it as the cultural adaptation, to understand the place of food in contemporary Mizo society. And also I looked at the relationship between the food intake and the health consciousness among the Mizo society. In today's talk, I would like to discuss the role played by Mizo women, especially in earlier times on food production, food preparation, the consumption. And also I would like to throw some light on how far gender manifested itself on food habits of the Mizos. So as we all know, Mizo society is a patriarchal society. And also there are many old sayings that imply that women had no status in society, which reflects the gender inequality and gender discrimination, especially in pre-colonial Mizo society. So I would like to name a few of those old sayings. So we have this saying called "Meitiale takai sakwa and." So in translation, it means women and crabs have no religion, which implies that a woman simply follows the religion of her husband or her father and could have no religion of her own. And also there's another saying that is "Meitiale paltiatu antlakte," that is women and old friends can be replaced, which means a man is at liberty to replace his wife if he thinks she no longer serves his purpose. And another is Meitafin Tuikural Akaila, which means that the wisdom of women do not cross the village water point. And another one is Takaisa Sa Nisu, Meitatu Tu Nisu, meaning women's word is not counted as word, as crab's meat is not counted as meat. So food is one way through which the place, or rather the role of gender in Mizo society and even history can be reconstructed. And also among the Mizos, we have seen division in terms of food items and eating habits. Like in pre-colonial period and even the colonial period, women hardly took dog meat. As A.G. McCall stated that women stayed away from dog meat consumption for its unpleasant proclivities. Even today, this consumption of dog meat among the Mizo women is rare. But the fact remains that in the 21st century, that is among the Mizos, consumption of dog meat by a girl is unbefitting. So even traditionally, crab was also considered as women's meat. So in pre-colonial Mizo society, manliness was sometimes related with food. So those who could control themselves in eating, as well as those finishing faster than friends, were considered to be manly. So pre-colonial Mizo tried to maintain and keep up with this practice. Generally, like Mizo women consume significantly, we can say, fewer calories than men, and they were perceived as more feminine the less they eat. So in the meantime, like consuming more calories or a large amount of food was considered more manly. So like women were also like expected to cook food for the family, and girls from a very young age were expected to know how to cook. So food preparation usually took place in the household, but then on festive occasions, it required the involvement of appointed specialists, food specialists. We called it as fatu, which was mostly done by men. So men stayed away from cooking at home to avoid being called Thai boy, that is like the unmanly, whereas like their ability to cook without hesitation on feasting occasion is indicative of Mizo males' attempt to gain social recognition. Shakespeare had written that it was women who cooked breakfast of rice, and like at noontime for lunch they have a meal of rice including some herbs, and then for dinner like the meal varied a little from the previous one. Mizo women were never like the Mizo women never considered this food preparation, making dinner and all as a work, and they blindly accepted it, that it was part of their duty as being the fair sex. They did not realize that it was the food that had prepared that bound them together with their families, and they even urged the female child to do such laborious work without any complaint. So through food, they produced family lives, but unlike other societies, they did not get back respect and favor and power from the feeling of being like needed, which is evident from the aforesaid Mizo sayings on women. All right, that's all I can say for the introduction. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Saiding Pui. It is an imperfect platform in the sense that we have so many speakers and we don't have enough time. But I did appreciate hearing a few words of Mizo and the translation. Yeah, it was fantastic to hear that. And I'm so sorry to say I don't recall having heard it before, which is very sad to say, but that's the reality. All right, well, let's go to our next speaker. let's bring in Samuel VL Tlanga, Associate Professor and Head of the Department of History at the Government Aizawl West College. His areas of interest include contemporary world history and peace studies and the role of civil society and church in Mizoram peace process. It's over to you, Samuel. Do we have Samuel? I'm just going to wait for a few beats. It's a good time for us to tell you all that in the second round, we will ask the question what the rest of outside of Mizoram gets wrong about Mizoram. And we'll also take questions and answers from you, the audience. So if you want to start asking your questions, you want to get a head start, you can start asking questions in the chat box right away. Right. So if you're not able to get Samuel right now, let me go to let me just wait for a second though.
They had a power cut, so
Right. So let's just bring in Zara Bawitlung, who's the assistant professor of sociology at Mizoram University. He has completed his doctorate in sociology from JNU. His areas of interest lie in cultural studies, urban and rural sociology, sociological theory, and political sociology. Zara, it's over to you.
Thank you, Venkatesh, for the good time. It's interesting, always interesting to talk to an audience like this, because this is an opportunity for us to share our area of interest and what we are doing in the Northeast to the mainland India. I have many things to say, but I'll confine myself to my area of study. That is, I am working in the Mizoram University, and my area of interest is basically urban studies. Why I'm looking at urban studies is that, as we all know, that Mizoram is one of the small states in India, and urbanization has only recently come in. So because of that, we are seeing the forces of urbanization, which are seen in other parts of the world already. And another thing is, since we are urbanized quite lately, the forces of urbanization that we see are different from what we see in other parts of the world. So when we look at urban studies, we can see that there are, let's say, three forms of urbanization. One, now the central government and the state governments are really looking at in various policy with which urbanization is being taken care of. Like, for example, the central government have various schemes like Amrut we have. Under the previous UPA government also we have JNURM. Then nowadays we are seeing things called smart city. And Aizawl is selected as a smart city project by the government of India. And we are gradually seeing new changes. That is the first one, that is policy. And secondly, we are looking at experiences, urban experiences. What our experience differs from the rural area, and what is the main difference with urban society. And lastly, we are seeing structures and forms in urban area which are impacting both the first two, that is policy as well as human experience. So now we'll look at the various urban experiences since I have a limited time. Now, what are the urban experiences we are having? Now, if you look at Mizoram recently, you'll find that because of Cyclone Remal, many people have lost their life. We can see that this is a direct impact of urbanization to a large extent. Not all, but to a large extent. Why? Because many people from the rural area came to Aizawl and start their settlement here. Now, as we all know that Mizoram is hilly terrain. So earlier, all the places in Aizawl, let's take the example of Aizawl, all the places in Aizawl, the prime area are already taken by the early settlers. Now, the later people who came to Aizawl, what choices do they have? The only choices they have are places where the earlier people do not dwell on. And now we don't know that what kind of building bylaws and what kind of geological surveys are being done. So because of that, due to the lack of good urban habitation, people are living in less than good quality habitation. So because of that, when a situation like cyclone or cloudburst or earthquake happen, we can see that in the urban area, especially in the Northeast and especially in Mizoram, it is the common people who are suffering. And as our studies, I feel that this is one of the foremost impact of rampant urbanization without proper government intervention as well as proper planning. And secondly, the other urban dwellers. Like I say, there are many aspects, but one aspect I want to talk about is the urban informal sector. As we all know, in various parts of India, there is a large informal economy of urban informal sector. And especially in a state like Mizoram, this urban informal sector is very large. Now, let's just take the example of one group, that is these hawkers, vegetable hawkers. Now, in Aizawl, if you look at various localities have their market, but these markets are very small. And secondly, as we all know that these vegetables are seasonal. So because of seasonal thing, they are not able to occupy the market all the time. So because of that, and since the government do not provide proper hut or mandi for this kind of vegetable vendor, they do not have a proper space in which to sell their goods. So because of that, they are selling door to door either, or they are selling on the footpath. So when they're selling on the footpath, again, they are clamoring for the space with other sorts of people. So in such a situation, I just want to bring in one theorist. He is David Harvey. He has developed a theory by a French sociologist, which is right to the city. When we are talking about urbanization, we have to talk about a right. So whose right it is? Now, to go again with policy, I have an interview with the chief architect of the Mizoram Public Work Department, and he told me that the problem we face in Mizoram was that in the past, when we are planning the city of Aizawl, we never planned for the pedestrian. We plan only for the vehicles. So if you happen to come to Aizawl, if you want to walk on foot, then in many places it is very difficult to walk on foot because the roads are designed for vehicles. But nowadays, there are lots of pedestrian. And again, just what I have talked about, the vegetable seller. So that means that urban planning is impacting on not only one thing, but it is having multiple impacts. So in that, we have to look at development holistically. So that is why I am talking about urban studies, because at this time in Mizoram, our urbanization is not so entrenched.
Correct.
There are still chances for change. So I'll just conclude. And in that, it is still time for the government to make certain changes so that urbanization can be done in a more holistic way. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I felt like a certain TV anchor who cuts people off. That is not my intention, but yeah, we have that limitation. Thank you so much. Let's bring in, we'll finish our round and then bring in the people who dropped off. So let's go next to Dr. C. Lalmohan Sankimi, an assistant professor at the Center for Media Studies, JNU. She was teaching at the Indian Institute of Mass Communication, Northeast, for 12 years before joining JNU. And before that, she had industrial experience with Doordarshan as an empaneled producer and as a consultant with Public Health Engineering Department, Government of Mizoram. Her research focuses on consumer culture, social media management, and the use of digital media platforms for entrepreneurship. Kimi, it's over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Venkatesh, Sabrina, and the whole team from boomlive for giving me this opportunity. And it is a delight to share this platform with friends and acquaintances, particularly Zara. I've always enjoyed listening to him, and it's good to see you all. And now the reason why I choose to talk on this topic is that I am currently working on a 2-year research project on the use of digital media platforms for entrepreneurship among Mizo women, wherein I am focusing on digital empowerment for alternative livelihood, self-reliance, and gender equality. And also, and as such, I'm particularly happy to share and interact on this topic. Now, why do we need to talk about entrepreneurship and digital media platforms? We may all agree that we are seeing the proliferation of entrepreneurship with the rise of digital media platforms. And it is heartening to see many Mizo young person building their businesses. They are making meaningful connections, and they learn and promote their business, and they are making positive impact in our society and even beyond our society. Now, I, as a Mizo woman, want to say that we Mizo women are particularly hardworking. Entrepreneurship runs in our blood, and you may meet any random Mizo woman, and that woman may be a home baker who bake cakes on the order basis, or she may be a weaver, or who is making pickle, chips, or any other edible things for a living. She may be, how will I say, into handicraft works, or she may be an artisan. And I was also once into weaving and crochet business. My friend and I started WhatsApp group to sell the products that we made way back in 2014. We really enjoyed it. We could not continue it because of our career commitments and other things. If given a chance, I would still want to do it. And the reason why I'm sharing this is that many Mizo women will be able to, I relate to the experience that I have in terms of entrepreneurship and stuff like that. Now, so what we are seeing now is consequently digital media and entrepreneurship together are taking consumer culture to the next level, or we may say a much, much higher level. People, of course, have always consumed what we say the necessities of life, like food, shelter, clothing, but previously there was little economic motive for increased consumption among the mass. Our society has evolved. It's I'd like to call today's society a digital society because I'm being inspired by Professor Simon Lindgren, who's used the term digital society in his book, Digital Media and Society. Today, we know that consumption is now frequently seen as our principal role, and ours is a very consumer-oriented culture. I'm not saying this in the negative sense of the term, of course. Now, focusing on women entrepreneurship, while it is encouraging to see many Mizo women running their business from the comfort of their homes, but it must be mentioned that they are facing challenges that come with the use of social media platform for entrepreneurial activities. Now, women own small to medium-sized business are particularly vulnerable to cyber crimes and online fraud. And these women-owned enterprises are easy to target because they are typically single-person operations that use unsecured personal devices, which are easy to target for cyber criminals. Now, if we looked at high traffic Facebook page for which are being used by sellers and resellers. For example, Mizo Internet Bazaar and other Mizo social media communities, you will know better than me. We regularly see posts about hardworking women who are cheated of their hard-earned money. Many times, even the police department, cyber cell cannot do much to resolve because of shortcomings that they too are facing. Many times they feel helpless and felt that trolling is the best weapon that they have against people who cheated them. And ironically, it is in most cases, let us say, it is women themselves who are cheating these women entrepreneurs. Now, to overcome these challenges, there is a need for digital empowerment of women, which will provide them strategic approach to pursue their ventures in building sustainable online business. And there is a need to deliver media literacy for digital empowerment to accelerate the prospect of an alternative livelihood, self-reliance, and gender equality. Okay, I will end my introduction with that note. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kimi. I just want to do a time check. It's 5:40. I want to come to each of you 3 times. So I don't know how we'll do that. We will do our best. Let's bring in the 2 speakers who we missed earlier. First, Joseph and then Samuel. Just to remind you all, Joseph is working as assistant professor at the Department of Political Science at the Government T. Romana College. Areas of interests, autonomy and federal studies, Northeast political history, and borderland studies. Joseph, let's try now. Let's see if it works.
Okay, am I audible now?
Yes, you are.
Okay, at this time in Aizawl, there was a power fluctuation for the last 2-3 months now. So sorry for that thing. So I think I will try to.
Joseph, don't apologize, because we now know a little bit as to how it is to live in Aizawl. So in New Delhi, for example, there are hardly any power cuts. So this is all part of the experience. Sorry, over to you.
Okay. Yes, since I have talked about the FMR and the border fencing, I engaged with these things for the last 2-3 years. And what I found out is that the central government, especially this present regime, they keep on pushing the state government to look into to relook into the security of the state. Recently this year, at the beginning of this year, I think in January 2nd or like that, the Home Minister has announced that the FMR will be suspended, and later on they do that, and the border fencing will also be introduced in the Indo-Myanmar borders. So there has been a havoc, a cry from the public from both sides, whether this will be possible, whether this will work out. Because recently I have visited the Bangladesh side, which border fencing has been going on for nearly more than 20 years. I have not seen any development much, because that village which I have visited in the Bangladesh side, Korpuichua, it has been designed by the Indian government to be a border hub with all the smart technology. But what I have seen in 2019, I have visited that part, and in this year also I have visited again. Even I asked this personally to the Minister of External, the Jaishankar, when he came here for some MP campaign or like that during the Lok Sabha election. So even I asked him personally during that time. What I have seen is that since Mizoram and Bangladesh, we see that part of the area has been occupied by the similar ethnic origin, the Chakma and the Mizos. We can see that. So similarly, in the case of the Myanmar side also, has been an ethnic linkages. We can say that even from the pre-colonial time, and trade has been going on, informal trade has been going on since the pre-colonial. But with the introduction of the modern nation state by the colonial and later continued by the Indian state after independence, the movement between these 2 countries, Myanmar and India, particularly on that side, there has been lots of restriction. At the beginning of the independence, we can see that for both the government allows some form of free movement up to 40 kilometers. But in 2004, it has been reduced to 16 kilometers. So that's one thing. And recently, because of the Myanmar uprising and Bangladesh, some Zhou Natak, we call it the Zhou ethnic group, who seek refuge in the Mizoram. They also, especially in the Longklai district, we can see that after this has been continuous for more than 1 year, the government of India is a little bit conscious and try to restrict that thing. And it has been all connected with the Manipur issue also, we can say that. So because of that, the government of India is insisting the state government to restrict that movement. So that's why they try to suspend the FMR, and they try to introduce border fencing. But that is one thing. And recently there is one thing which the GOI is insisting, is that biometric enrollment for the refugee. This is the first time in India which we have heard, because in no other places this thing has been introduced. So I don't know what will happen after the biometric enrollment. What will happen to the people, the refugee, whether the security force will try to arrest, send them back, or that's a very, very serious issue, I should say, because India itself does not have any proper refugee law or uniform inter-border policy. Yeah. So that's why when this thing come up, I was the one among very few people to react here in locally. I keep on interviewing in the TV local channel, even in Doordarshan, and I really protest these things without any, I don't know, without any condition or without any, because it will bring hardship to the people. So with that, I will come up later if there is any questions or like that. So I will end that round with that.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Joseph. We could hear you clearly as well. So that was plus. And let's bring in Samuel Tlanga, and then we go to the next round. In the next round, we basically ask you all the speakers, to talk about, what we get wrong about Mizoram. And, you can, I'll call upon one or two of you, but you just have to raise your hands, and then we can have a quick chat. And the third round, we'll answer some questions. So for those, who missed the introduction, Samuel is an associate professor at the head of the Department of History, Government as all, West College. Areas of interest include contemporary world history and peace studies, and the role of civil society and church in Mizoram's peace process. Over to you, Samuel.
Thank you, Venkatesh. Thank you, Sabina, and the rest in the team. Yes, this evening, my topic will be on initiatives taken by religious institutions in Mizoram during Ramboy, that is the insurgency period. I hope we all know that Mizoram, between the year 1966 to 1986, was very much disturbed. It was in the worst form of conflict. But after that 20 years of disturbance, it could somehow achieve or attained, the peace and tranquility. And the reason why I've chosen this religious institution's role in bringing peace is because one of the reasons is the Carnegie Commission, in its executive summary in the year 1997 on the preventing deadly conflict, pointed out 5 factors that give religious leaders and institutions, be it from the grassroots or to the transnational level, a comparative advantage for dealing with conflict. 1, clear message that resonates with their followers. Number 2, long-standing and pervasive presence on the ground. 3, well-developed infrastructure that often includes sophisticated communications network, connecting local, national, and international offices. And 4, legitimacy for speaking out on crisis issues. And 5, traditional orientation to peace and goodwill. And in case of Mizoram, these points mentioned by the Carnegie Commission turned out to be very accurate. Therefore, efforts made by the religious denominations within the state of Mizoram merit further investigation on one of the various dynamics that ended the 20-year Ramboy in Mizoram during 1966 to 1986. And right from the start, in 1966, in Mizoram, in March, different organizations and different parties have been striving towards solving the problem, the conflict. And Aizawl, which is the capital city of Mizoram, literally became a battleground. And to this end, one of the leading religious denominations, the Presbyterian Church, realizing the need to restore normalcy, issued pamphlet condemning violent activities, any form of violence. And the standing committee of that denomination formed a committee called the Citizens Committee, which included members from all religious denominations within Mizoram at that time. And this committee initially focused on relief and rehabilitation. And 10 days after the outbreak of violence, some of the students of the colleges and also of the staff of the institutions run by these religious institutions, along with other concerned citizens, collected, corpse and number of animal carcasses that had mostly decomposed from the streets of Aizawl. And the continued efforts of the Citizens Committee brought normalcy back to Aizawl, the city, the capital city. However, it could not move freely to the rural areas where Indian Army was hunting the Mizo National Front volunteers. And though Aizawl became a safer place, the situation in Mizoram as a whole worsened. And leaders of both the Presbyterian Church and the Baptist Church formed what was called the Christian Peace Committee. And the Citizens Committee became defunct with the formation of this Christian Peace Committee. And the disturbances escalated. Leaders of the two largest denominations, as I have said, the Presbyterian and Baptist churches, they felt the need to create a committee. And as I have mentioned, the Christian Peace Committee was formed on 8th of September 1966. And
right.
The main aim of this committee was to bring mutual understanding and goodwill between the government and the MNF, and to restore peace and normalcy and harmony in Mizoram. And it also appointed the peace delegation that went on to meet the leaders of both the parties. And this peace delegation condemned violence for political or any other reason. And it also stated that violence in any form was to be discarded and killing human beings was to be rejected. And it also made many suggestions to both the parties. But at the same time, this committee and the delegation of peace was accused of, the overground voice of the underground. And sometimes the underground people, they accuse this peace committee as taking side of the government. So the committee conveyed to the Central Indian government that though all demands made by the insurgent group may not be possible to grant, but there were some substantial reasons behind these demands, they said. And it felt that the central government was also somehow responsible for the underdevelopment of the region. And this lack of development, they said, created a sense of alienation and lack of belonging to the mainstream. And the representatives...
Just completely run out of time. So can you finish the thought and then we'll come back to you. Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll stop here for the time being. Maybe we can continue with the discussion.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you. Not my intention to cut you off, but
no problem.
yes. So we, I made a big mistake because we have another speaker we haven't yet heard from rather. But the good thing about that is we have about 5 to 6 minutes for 6 o'clock, and let's finish that off and then get into the second round. Let me invite Mapuya Lalnun Puya, who's the director of Zonet TV Private Limited, also the editor and publisher of Manglayani Daily, a Mizo language newspaper, which boasts of the highest circulation in Mizoram. Mapuya, it's over to you.
Thank you, Boom Team. So I was invited in the last minute, so it's kind of okay to speak at the last. Anyway, Sabina asked me to talk about the newspaper and the TV stuff first. So let me just start with that brief. So here's a brief of the newspaper. The newspaper Wang Laini Daily was started in 1978 by two friends, two of my dad's friends actually. I'm the second gen for this news media. And it was started as a fortnightly and remained like that for a couple of years. And jokingly says that those times they used to jokingly say it's a paid summary. The new time, it was not a serious paper that it continued like that for a year or two. And after that, seeing the opportunity, he says that those times in the 80s, there was no that and distributed in, so there was no more paper. So he asked his friends to sell him the newspaper, and it was sold to him for 2 bottles of beer. So that's how he took it up somewhere in 1985. And fast forward a decade, 2 decades later, with one of the friends who sold him the newspaper and 2 other friends, they started a local cable network with a hope that the electronic media could be used in a better way for the people of Mizoram, especially for distributing information, news, and current affairs. So that's how we to have a newspaper and local channel. And I would like to say that the local media presence in Mizoram is quite strong. If not one of the best, in terms of impact and influence and delivery, it would not be a second. I'm not comparing, and I'm not talking about Wang Laini and Zonet particularly, but the whole news, the whole local media. In terms of impact and influence that it has in the region, I think it will not be second to any other medium. And beyond news and current affairs, we have our entertainment contents, we have our fashions and beauty culture, and it's highly impacting those industry as well. I would just like to say that, you know, the contribution of the media on such industry is so high that we have many Indian international players in football and some other fields as well. So that's how much the impact that media has. And till recently, it has always been an upward trajectory for the local media, but we all know about the alternate media that was emerging. But then, despite that, also the impact of the alternate media on the society was still very low. And even though there was a question of how you know, it will disrupt the flow of information and the consumption, everyone thinks that we still have time to figure it out. But then a pandemic happens. So during the pandemic, everyone was glued to their phone, was sitting at home, and especially in Mizoram, it was an extensive and prolonged lockdown. Everyone was now addicted to a fast-paced, positive feedback loop media. And then the consumption and how we consume information and disperse information changes rapidly. So to put into perspective, the impact that it has during the past 2 years is that the additional bandwidth requirement for Mizoram except for Assam, in the past 2 years was more than all the Northeast state combined. And the high, and we can see that because of the high penetration of smartphones,
Right.
and the connectivity, even though we don't have the best internet connectivity, but the level of penetration is quite high.
Okay.
So for a small population and a very close-knit society, the impact that it has is very, very rapid, and it's changing very fast. So these are the things that I think I'll talk about in the later sessions, especially with the international border and the influence of immigrations and other aspects of such problems. So I just want to put in perspective first that Mizoram as a society is a very close-knit, and we are high consumptions. We have a high consumptions of internet and social medias. That for me will be my first session.
Thank you. Thank you. You know what, Mapui, I'll come back to you right now. In fact, let's move into our second round. And I just want to say that Sabina Rahman here, she was the one who started putting together this panel. And like in every situation, even when it comes to, let me give you an example of, let's say, Tamil Nadu. If you were to do a panel on Tamil Nadu, we know the names of some 10 people that we can reach out to because they are regularly in the media. That was not necessarily the case with Mizoram or any of the other states. So it was difficult the process was, it took some time, which is probably why many of the invites reached you late. But I'm really happy that, we've tried to, we've got a wide variety of voices. Let's go to the next section. And the next section is essentially, it will move faster. And let's try to wrap up the next section by 20 minutes. I will invite you all one by one to answer this one question. So we from outside Mizoram, whether it is the other northeastern states or mainland India or from outside India even, we understand what we don't get or what we get wrong about Mizoram. Mapuya, why don't you go first, and then I'll ask Saidingpui and then Bazik. And then I will invite the others. So first Mapuya, Saidingpui, and then Bazik on what we get wrong about Mizoram.
Yeah, thank you once again. So there are so many things that can be said on this topic, but since even the other panelists were talking about the immigrations and how we share international borders with Myanmar and Bangladesh. So the first thing is how the media reports about this such incidents in Mizoram. I think that's the first thing that we should focus on, because the international border is quite long. It's very porous.
I think we're losing internet
the
connection.
impact that it has in the society. Hello.
Continue. Why don't we come back to you, Mapuya?
Sure.
We come back to you.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, let's go. Let's bring in Saidingpui.
All right. Okay, am I audible?
Yes.
All right. So addressing Sir's question, I would like to bring out two misconceptions that I thought the metropolitan people had on this miso food. So there's one distinct misconception that I would like to highlight is regarding the food aroma, the smell of food, especially from Northeast India, including the miso cuisine, such as the bamboo shoots, that is the fermented bamboo shoots, soya beans, that akoni, And this in Mizo, we had this seasoning called saum that is similar, somewhat, it's not similar, but then somewhat similar to the pork lard that the Naga had. So that those smell of the Northeast food, it's very different from what the metropolitan or rather the non-Northeasterners consume. So that difference sometimes causes trouble. So I would like to bring one instance that is, if I'm not mistaken, a few years ago in Delhi, there were some incidents at university hostels where hostelers from non-Northeastern regions, they requested the administration to address concerns about the pungent smell of the food being prepared by the Northeast students. So that is like causing cultural misunderstanding. The distinct flavor and even the cooking method of Northeast Indian cuisine, it's quite unfamiliar and it's being misunderstood by those not acquainted with the regional food culture. So that leads to misconception and even lack of appreciation for the unique quality. So that challenge lies in bridging the gap in understanding. And another thing that I would like to put forward is regarding the relation between this food and identity. So we often use food as a marker of cultural identity, and oftentimes we have seen names of a particular dish associated with a particular region, such as if we say South Indian food, then we directly link it with a dish such as idli or dosa. However, like if we look at this Mizo cuisine, it is often perceived as simple and easy to prepare and sometimes considered bland, that might not have any popular dish that is like not associated with any of our identity. So nevertheless, like from my research conducted, I have observed that like the Mizo, like we usually associate food with identity and food, not in terms of the final product, not in terms of the name of the dish. Moreover, like the Mizos, they often associate identity with food by emphasizing their deep connection to the forest, which play a crucial role in their livelihood. Like the traditional Mizo cuisine relies heavily on ingredients sourced from the forest. They're heavily dependent on the forest, such as bamboo shoots, wild herbs, and even the various foods. So that dependence on forest resources not only shapes their dietary habits, but that also reflects their cultural heritage, and also that creates their very own identity. So that's all I can say. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much. Bazik, it's over to you. What do we get wrong about Mizoram?
All right. So apart from many things that we wanted to share, I would like to talk about representation here. So in visual culture, from my own area of interest, one of the things that we have seen, that we have had a long history of being a subject of ethnographic gaze, right? Where narratives and representation from the cultural outsider has been a major issue. So there has been lots of misrepresentation or exotic representation, and has been much talked about that can reinforce stereotypes and misunderstanding. So I will talk about a few issues here. One is that Mizos are known to be soft-spoken, which is not necessarily wrong or right. And also we were given the status of being the happiest state, right? And this kind of readings or it perpetuates these stereotypes that Mizos are perhaps uninteresting or do not participate in seemingly larger politics or issues, nationally or internationally, and also that they keep to themselves. And this is totally wrong, I guess. And there has been many voices emerging, but are either silenced or not getting the right platform. And especially in my area of interest in the arts, contemporary artists like myself has been actively trying to address these issues, regain agency and tell our own stories and perform our cultural expressions. And I would say this is a vicious cycle, and stereotypes are not necessarily wrong altogether. And it also carries a certain truth to it. And again, this is what I call as being multifaceted, right? And all these kind of things perpetuates a feel-good factor amongst the Mizos, and thus complacency and silence. So I'll just try to illustrate one example here. I want to talk about driving ethics in Mizoram, particularly in Aizawl, which is now becoming really popular amongst media houses and content creators across the country, dubbing as the silent city. I guess a lot of us have heard about it. So while driving ethics in Mizoram without unnecessary honking or abrupt overtaking and sticking to one's own lanes is commendable, where people have mutual respect and understanding. I feel that this overt representation, portraying it as an epitome of patience and discipline, leaves little space to question the failed schemes and unrealized promises by the government or politicians, right? We dwell too much on this feel-good portrayal that we make it really easy for the authorities and the ones in power to abstain from their responsibilities and for everyone else to hold them accountable. So in a way, this is a vicious cycle where no one is making, we gain nothing out of it, really. I guess I'll stop with that.
Great. Yeah. Now is also a good time to remind everybody that we're going to ask our guests to answer questions. If you have any questions, so please write in with your questions in the chat box. That way we will be able to pick questions and send them over. We'll try to get all your questions answered. Let's move to Zara, Kimi, in that order on what we get wrong about Mizoram. Zara, and then Kimi.
Yes.
Zara, can you talk a little bit about what we get wrong about?
Yes. Actually, my video was a bit stuck. So actually, as a sociologist, I just want to focus on one thing that I think other parts of India have a wrong conception about us. I was studying in Delhi for 13 years. And during that time, one of the big question I used to have was that, are you really Indian? So there are many other things that are in play, but the big question of having to prove our Indianness to other people is disconcerting. At the same time, it's also an insult to us because they feel that because of two factors, they're questioning our Indianness. One is we do not belong to this Aryan or Dravidian type of racial characteristics. We belong more to the Asian, Mongoloid stock. And another thing is because of religion, because of Christianity, they are suspecting, I think, our Indianness. But once you come to Mizoram, you will find that our Indianness is, I'll say, on par as it is in other parts of India. Because since, especially after the independence of India, people in Mizoram have no other identity except Indianness. And one of the very important factor that you can see is that in our daily languages, there are many Hindi language we are using in our everyday word, which until I go to Delhi, I did not know that were Hindi. I thought that they were just Mizo. So, but if you go to Myanmar, I've been to Myanmar, I have visited Myanmar for 1 month, and there are lots of Mizo living there also. But in their words, instead of Hindi they are using Burmese. So the infiltration of Indian language in Mizo is one of the, let's say, Indian identity. Then secondly, another very important thing is sports. When cricket is on, if you go all over Mizoram, you will find the cricket lovers rooting for India. Just like other parts of India, especially when India and Pakistan are playing the game, you will find lots of people glued to the TV looking at it. And even just now, we are having 2024 Olympics. And in that, I have seen many WhatsApp statuses commenting on the performance of Indian athletes. And yesterday also, I forget the name, that Indian wrestler, there were many statuses in Mizo saying that we are standing with you, even though you lost the game, we are standing with you. So these kind of things, that sports is a good factor that is bringing out our Indianness. Then another thing is regarding food. If you come to Mizoram, you will find, unless you are searching for a typical Indian dish, you will find Mughlai dish, you will find typical North Indian dish, you will find South Indian dish also you will find. So in that we are enjoying Indian food. And another thing is, I think that we cannot give less credit to Bollywood. Just go to rural part of Mizoram, you will find people singing Bollywood song and knowing all the Bollywood actors. And many Indians, let's say mainland Indians, are suspecting Mizos because we are Christian, and there is always a talk of foreign Christian agent working in Mizoram. Just come to Mizoram, you never find those foreign Christian agents. We are Christian, we are not Aryan, we are not Dravidian, but we are Indian. And that is what other parts of India always have wrong about us. And that is, as a sociologist, I want to clarify. With that, I end. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you very much. I come from South India, where we have our own stereotypes, even within South India, you know, and we all have our own identity issues. Like, I'm a Kannada speaker, and when I grew up, I used to note with interest how there were tensions between Kannada and Tamil identities in Bangalore. In any case, that was, you know, every one of you has said something interesting for me personally, but we have 3 more speakers. Kimi, it's over to you. What do we get wrong about Mizoram? And after Kimi, let's go to Samuel and then Joseph, and then we'll go to Q&A.
Hope will excuse me, I will not be turning on my video because I have some technical issue from my end.
No problem. No problem. We can hear you clearly. If you can bring...
All right. Okay, thank you so much. Now,
Kimi, if you can bring your mouth closer to the microphone, we can hear you
all
better.
right. Okay. That will be possible. Now, recently I went for a field trip in the month of June, to be specific. I went to 3 districts, Saitwal, Khozol, and Sampai, and I met a couple of women entrepreneurs in all the districts. And what I have seen is that there is no difference when it comes to skill sets. They have it. They also have access to digital media platforms through mobile phones, basically. But women in rural areas are still reluctant to use digital media platforms for running their business. So there are gaps when it comes to women residing in rural and urban areas, particularly in terms of access to market to sell their products as well. So the point that I want to raise here is that digital divide is not limited to access or accessibility. The conversation on digital divide needs to go beyond access. We must talk about capacity building, the need to do away with reluctancy out of fear and other negativity surrounding the issue being discussed. And the second point that I want to highlight is the need to do away with the tendency to generalize plain and hilly areas. For instance, in plain areas, we may be able to cover a distance of 40 kilometers within an hour. However, in hilly areas, roads are built on hill slopes. It is usually narrow and winding. The same distance of 40 kilometers could barely be covered in 2 hours. There are certain other examples that we can cite. So the point I'm trying to make here is not to generalize on things, but to look at things from case by case basis, area by area, region by region basis. That is what I wanted to highlight now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Samuel, it's over to you. By the way, we have a question already. Whoever wants to take it among our guests, put your name below on the chat and I'll come to you. Okay, Samuel and then Joseph, what do we get wrong about Mizoram?
Yes, thank you, Venkatesh. Yeah, sticking on to what I have mentioned before regarding the religious institutions initiatives, I think that the religious institutions, including the ones in Northeast India in general and in Mizoram in particular, have been seen as bodies that is not very comfortable with the mainstream, or have been seen as institutions kind of instigating, people creating problems. But this is just the opposite in the case of the religious institutions in Mizoram, actually, the religious institutions in Mizoram have been proclaiming the Indianness of the Mizo people here in Mizoram. And I have recently gone through one small bit of write-up that talks about how peace could be maintained in Mizoram while its surrounding areas are in, conflicts of different types, ethnic conflicts, religious, communal conflicts, or whatever. Here, this write-up talks about three main reasons how and why Mizoram could maintain its peace. And it talks about, avoidance of generalization and dehumanization by the people of Mizoram. And it also talks about the sense of justice and fairness, and also about the presence of strong civil institutions that provide intellectual and moral leadership. And that can include, the religious institutions that I have mentioned before. So I think that perception of, many of the mainstream about the religious institutions in Mizoram is just the opposite. And these religious institutions have been really trying hard to, to educate the people about the Indianness and the belongingness of, the Mizo to the mainstream India. And also these institutions are very instrumental in providing intellectual and moral leadership towards this. Thank you.
Thank you, Samir. And the last, we have Joseph. Joseph, it's over to you. Some questions have come in. So we'll get to that round as soon as we finish with you, Joseph.
Okay, I think I'm audible now, no?
Yes, you are.
So let me try to wind up the things. Maybe people are right, we are wrong what to do also, because right and wrong, it's on the whatever side we are inclining to. But let me do it quickly regarding this FMR and border fencing. There are many studies, I say that even by close Observer Research Foundation, Monohar Parikar, IDSA, and even the uh, United Nations, that drugs, contraband items, including gold, diamonds, are prevalent in this area. That's true. No one can argue that. Even the locals are suffering because of that. But because of that, since the state policymaker try to restrict the people movement and even restrict the state using this border fencing and all. So what's the point of punishing the state and the people who have been fighting this for a long time? Because recently I have seminar with one of the most renowned, among the most renowned professor in Northeast, Professor Sajalnak. He make a good point that these things are, this area in Mizoram, neighboring country, looking into the geopolitics of the location of the present state of Mizoram. These things are very prevalent, very much big issues. So a small state like Mizoram, it will be very difficult to handle all these things, what he has told us. So that's the things. Because why not, instead of punishing the people, the movement, the border, why not the government of India, including the state government, try to equip well their agency, those who are patrolling the borders? Because it is the people who suffer first. And it is the thing which a single state cannot handle. That's the thing. So, there has always been a wrong perception regarding this, that people are infiltrating especially the underground people are infiltrating, and all these items, illegal items, are coming through that area. We don't. There is. It's difficult to deny that. That's true. That's true. But the thing is that how does this came into the Indian state? Because all these borders are very porous on one hand, And on the other hand, also, who is guarding this border? It is the Indian state agency who is guarding them. So who will be the culprit on that line? It is not the people. You can't blame the people on your failure. That's what my take is on that. And one thing I would like to say is that since I've been working in, no, studying in Delhi for more than 10 years and also working in Guwahati, Ombiyo Kumar does for nearly 5 years. I have the opportunity to visit all the state of Northeast and even to visit the borders area. And I've submitted the report on in the ICSSR also regarding my studies, regarding the state society interface. So what I've seen, not only in Mizoram, what I've seen in the Northeast is that the people, especially the hill tribe, are struggling to be a part of the state process. They are struggling. Like Zara has said, they don't deny the fact that they are Indians. But what does the Indian state has given to them? Because let me give one example in the village of Nagaland. I asked the headman, how do you understand the state? He said that we have seen the colonial state, they come and burn our village. We have seen the Japanese, they come and burn our village. We have seen the Indian army, they come and burn our village. So what what that headman will think about the state? State is something which is very surveillance, very strong state, like Carl Smith and Max Weber have defined that the state is the only organization which can inflict violence. So that is the understand which people are having in many part of the villages here. So we have to be very careful in integrating these people, their culture, their ethnic. We have to understand it. And today also, I have discussed with my colleague how Indian democracy survived. I told them that my my understanding is that it is the diversity itself, that Indian is Indian democracy survive. So because we have seen many things happening in Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, our neighboring state, but we still survive. Indians still survive because it is the how we understand and how the democratic institution is working, and that democracy is not, we should not narrow it down only to the election. We have to define it as an understanding of the people, integration, not assimilation by force. So that is my take, and we have to understand each other, because as a Mizo, I am also Indian. People have to accept my Mizo-ness. I have to accept otherness also. So that's the things which I want to take, and with that I will end my
It's
talk.
a great
Thank you.
It's a great thought in which to end this section. Thank you, Joseph. Let's take the 2-3 questions that we have, and I wanted to finish by 6:30, but I think it's okay if you push on for another 10 minutes extra, maximum 15 minutes extra. So let's see. Banshan Marwain's question, I will wait for someone to indicate they want to take it. But let's go to Joseph, since you were speaking, let's go to a question from Lal Nondika Darlong from Tripura University, Sociology Department. They're asking the question to you, Joseph. What role did the Mizoram government play in the Kuki Meitei crisis in Manipur, especially regarding allegations of aspirations for a greater Mizoram?
Okay,
you want to think about that answer, why don't you just think about your answer, and then let me get the other questions in as well. Dr. Zara, the question for you is, I think you've read, what has urbanization in Mizoram remained, why has it remained largely centered around Aizawl, even though the city is now having long power cuts? So that's the question. I think you've read the question. So Zara, why don't you answer that while Joseph thinks about this?
Yes, that is a very interesting question, Mr. Lanundika, and that is something which we have grappled. But to understand this, we have to look at the history of Mizoram. If you know the history of Mizoram, we get Union Territory in the year 1972. And in that, there were 3 districts: Aizawl District, Lunglei District, and Chimtuipui District. And in that, the center of the government was based in Aizawl. And after 1972, it was only in 1997 again that the reorganization of district in Aizawl happened. And only recently, 2 more times, we are having a bifurcation of the various districts. Now we have a large number of districts now. But when you look at the history, 1972 to 1997 is a long period of time. And during that time, all the successive state government have concentrated most of the governmental institution in Aizawl. For example, we all know that since it is the state capital, state secretariat is there, legislative assembly is there, and all the higher education systems are based in Aizawl. And another thing is that unlike other parts of the Northeast, where locality is taken into consideration. For example, if you talk to any Naga, they will say that even though they may live in Kohima or Dimapur, they say that I live in Kohima, I live in Dimapur, but my village is this and this. If you ask me right now, I'm living myself in Aizawl, even though I'm from Champhai, but maybe I'll go back to Champhai, maybe I'll not go back. So because of that, since the state government has concentrated all the developmental activities in the state of Aizawl, especially in terms of 3 things. Number 1, governance. Number 2, health facilities. And number 3, educational facilities. Other districts also have hospitals. They have they have their own deputy commissioner, and they have their educational institution, but it is the institutions in Aizawl which always receive primacy. So right. For parents who want better education for their student, they have to come to Aizawl. For health conscious people, they have to come to Aizawl. Now the state governments are trying to rectify this, and they are gradually developing the other urban centers. But now this is only development center is Aizawl, but let's hope that the state government is trying to do something. And as a student of urbanization, this is something we also tell the government, that if urbanization is concentrated in Aizawl, it will create 2 urban problems. If other urban centers are developed, then population will be distributed across other urban centers, so that development in other parts of Mizoram can also have proper urbanization. So
okay,
these are the things. Yes.
Thanks for that, Zara. Let's get Joseph in for that question about the Kuki Meitei crisis in Manipur. Joseph, have you had to think about it?
Yes. Regarding the Kuki Meitei crisis, we all know that the situations were the situations, and I didn't need to elaborate much. But regarding the Greater Mizoram, this is the what I should say. It's a political slogan during the time of independence, demanded by the Mizo leaders to go back to the pre-colonial area, because we know that Mizo areas has been divided by the colonial regime into different, not only among the Indian state, but also Myanmar and Bangladesh also. So this is the slogan, not only for the Manipur things, but it has been going on, and it's a political slogan, I should say, to reconnect all the ethnic Mizo ethnic group into one administrations. But we all know that how difficult this can be, and I don't know whether I'm correct or I'm wrong, but this still has become an issue, but in reality, it will be really difficult. But regarding the refugee which come from other state also, it is always the duty of the government and the people to take care of the people, whether they are from your own ethnic identity or from different identity, because they are seeking refuge in your place. So I don't know whether I answered the questions, or if I need to elaborate, I can do that.
Yeah. No, it's okay. I think in the interest of time, we'll leave it at that, unless, people feel that they want you to elaborate. There are a few more questions. I want to get to that. 3 questions. Two questions and a comment. So someone called Android has said, and I think it stands well as a comment and not as a question, doesn't necessarily need an answer. But Android says, why should Indianness imply conformity to the larger group narrative in the mainland? Is it possible to identify as Indian without speaking Hindi, without having an appreciation for cricket, and without having an appreciation for Bollywood? I think that point is well taken. There's also something he said about Zara's perception of India being primarily shaped by the dominant mainland narrative. I would not go. I mean, Zara, if you want to say something, why don't you type an answer? But I think Zara was speaking specifically from the perspective of what is wrong with the way the mainland India sees Mizoram. And I think that was the context in which he was answering that question. Zara, if you want to say something, just type an answer. But let's get the questions in. Two more questions. How has, I'm going to ask Banchan to wait for the very end I'm going to go to your question last. But let's go to the third question. How has or how will the Mizoram government respond or plan for the recent crisis in Bangladesh, particularly in the districts bordering Bangladesh? Anyone wants to take that? Just unmute and speak.
Hi.
Mapulia, go ahead.
Yeah. I don't think it's the purview of Mizoram government to respond to international crisis, as rightly said by Joseph Sindhali. I think that the Mizoram government should be focusing on the safety of its people in the border areas, and leave that to this, leave the other, crisis to the international, central agencies who are guarding the borders, and I think it's their duty to do so as well. The Mizoram government should, I think, will be focusing on the safety of its people. And just a few days back, the district commissioner of the Lumley district, I believe, says that there should be restricting the. She ordered restrictions on activities within the 2 or 4 kilometer radius within the border. So that's the response till now. But I think that it's the purview of the central agencies, and Mizoram should wait on the government should wait on the directives of the central government. That's how I feel they should respond to such crisis.
Got it. Okay, that was useful. Thank you so much. Last question. I think I know who we can give it to. Banchan asks, anyone from the panel. So Samuel, if you can answer this question. They want to understand or know the terms Mizo, Zomi, and Zo. What is the difference? What are the three terms? Could you answer that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Venkata. Let me try and give a very quick and short reply to that. Yeah, Mizo, to my understanding, is a nomenclature of the dominant population in Mizoram, whereas Zomi, a large section of the same ethnic group in Manipur and some other parts call themselves Zomi. And Zo, maybe, a little bit smaller group of people in Manipur, they call themselves Zo. At the same time, some people classify all this Mizo, Zomi, and Zo people as Zo altogether. So that's a very quick and short answer I can give to that question. Thank you.
It's a question. I mean, every time we get questions such as these, the basic ones, I would say, but honestly, we don't know the answers many times, because for one thing that came up in the last 2 roundtables was why can't we use the term Adivasi instead of tribal in the Northeast? And so we had people reply and speak on that. On that note, let's wrap this evening. Zara has also answered. And I think that answer is, because I read the question, let me read the answer. Your take is true to a large extent, but national identity is based on shared identity and shared commonalities. While having our own individual identities, there is need for a shared memory. That is why I've taken the general understanding of general Indianness. So on that, let's just wrap up this evening. Thank you so much, every single one of you. Thank you specifically for our speakers to have come and given us their time. Thank you all, the audience, to have registered and stayed here for so long. We started with, I think, 48 people, and still more than an hour and a half later, we're still at 37, which shows the quality of the speakers that we've put together. I won't say we've put together, I'll say put together for Boom by Sabina Rahman and Shulu duo. Shulu's name I didn't take earlier, but that was a mistake. So Shulu was also involved in this. Thank you so much. We will do 5 more roundtables like this. And this is part of our Northeast Facts Network. And the whole idea for us is to kind of put together a handbook for mainland. I would say mainland, I'll say for non-Mizoram people and northeastern states people, whether they're from other parts of India or from other parts of the world. So we're trying to put together a handbook of basic mistakes we make. And this has been a very, very interesting and eye-opening conversation for me. Keep a lookout for announcements. I think the next one is going to be focused on Meghalaya, but I'm not 100% sure. We've got to get confirmations from all speakers, and getting confirmations is not easy, as many of you know. So thank you so much. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're logging in from.